Hello, can anyone see me? Let's see if it's working on here. There we go. Hi. I've been rummaging around through all my stuff, getting everything ready for today. Can everyone hear okay? Hello. Oh, I've got a few people joining. I've been sitting here watching people ready to, all my bits and bobs here. I've got so many art supplies, it's embarrassing. Yay, loud and clear, excellent. Hi Penny. Hello, Ms. Pearson. Hi Gillian, Anna, Angela. Hello everyone, Sue, hi Grace. Hi Deborah. There's a lady here I saw at the top who, is it 4 o'clock in the morning where you are? Hope you've got strong coffee. Oh, hi Sharon. Hi Victoria. And it looks like I've managed to get it in a landscape thing rather than portrait, which is good. So I think these are the last two kits that I've done that may have spooked people a little bit. So I'm going to paint them on screen today. So I've got those ready to go. I've got my pre-printed linen. What time is it? Is it exactly 1 now? Right, okay, I'm going to get started. So hello and thank you everyone for joining me. I'm going to be getting up and down from my desk here. So it's just a really informal little session just to show you how to get painting with things and the different sorts of materials that you can buy and that you can get for this kind of thing. Not trying to set myself as an expert in this field at all. I just like to add a little bit of colour to my paint, to my embroideries, just because sometimes I don't want a really heavy background. I want to add some context and a bit of depth to the embroidery. Hello, Susan Roberts. Hello. Oh, good. You've got your latte. That's good. Margaret Kim. Hello. Jane Thompson. We've got lots of people here. So these are the things I'm going to colour these with the paints and everything today. I've also got some of my other kits. This little watering can one that's more about sort of painting a smaller area, which is less forgiving than these sort of bigger ones. And then there's my Beatrix Potter little, hi Fiona. There's my Beatrix Potter little garden scene there, which needs a little bit of painting, which is also quite forgiving. And this potting shed. So I'll try and have a little go at doing some of all of these. And yeah, I'm going to get, oh my goodness, there's 118 people here. Hello, hello, hello. Right, try not to be nervous, Nikki. So I'll sit down here now. So when I do these, when I do my embroideries, I tend to, I'm designing them and I tend to sort of stitch them first and then I add colour at the end. If, hi, I add colour at the end if I feel it needs it. So I do it the opposite way around to what I recommend you would do. Because if you paint something after you've embroidered it, obviously the threads will soak up the colour. If you make a mistake, it's more of a drama because you've obviously already invested all that time in embroidering it. But I don't always know if I'm going to add colour or where I'm going to add colour until I've embroidered the thing. So I'm going to show you sort of how I start. I'm going to show you some different watercolour paints that I've got, different budgets and that kind of thing. I've got some silk fabric paints here as well, that I rarely use, to be honest, but I'll talk about those. I've got some normal colouring pencils, I've got watercolour pencils, so I think we're all set. So let's talk about watercolour paints first. Hi Kerry, rummaging through all my stuff here to show you what I've got. So the first set of watercolour paints that I ever, because I do a little bit of painting and some art classes in my spare time, and the set of paints that I was advised to get first of all was this Winsor & Newton. It's a Cotman set, which is their student range, and it's got lots of different colours in. So I'm going to be really basic here and talk about paints and colours from a really basic perspective, because I'm assuming that's what everyone wants to know. So if you know all of this stuff, just bear with until we get to the painting bit. Go off and make a cup of tea or something. So these are all half pans, which, as you can see, are half the size of these larger pans. So it's an affordable way of buying a big set of colours. I think this set was about £60. And the colours are all the proper names that you would see in books and on YouTube videos and that kind of thing. You've got your ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow, all of those sorts of colours. And there's a few that are already mixed so that you don't have to play around with greens and yellows and everything else to get the shades of blue and things that you want. So I'm talking about greens and yellows making blue, which is obviously not right. But what I'm saying is you've got all of your colours sitting here that you can use as and when, hi Sarah, as and when you need them. So this is I think this is a really good set to start with, but £60, a lot of money. The one that I recommend, and when I design the kits, I design them with this in mind. So this is a Dale Rowney Aquafine watercolour travel set. It's about £10 or £12 on Amazon, and it's got just a few colours, but it's got absolutely everything you need. You've got a couple of each colour, so you've got your 2 different blues, 2 different reds, a couple of yellows, and that helps you to mix the colours that you need. But I also try to make sure that you don't need to mix any colours and you can just use them straight from the pan. So that's the set that I recommend if you're a complete beginner and you want to just get a little set of paints, just have a go at doing some of this with. This is a good set to start with. You can also get, these are a good set that I've recently bought. These are Reeves watercolour tubes. This was £20 for this set, so really inexpensive. And with these, you just, with these tubes, you just put them in a little pan. So you just squeeze them out. You can put them in a little palette like this and squeeze them out into here. Or you can just put them straight into a pan. So you get a nice little sausage of colour. And then if you let that sort of dry out for a little while, it will last longer and be less intense when you come to use it. Hi Ali, hope you're okay. So these are also a really good set of colours. You've got everything you'd need in there. £20 on Amazon. I think, yeah, 24 colours. So that's also a really good beginner kit. Hi Mandy. Got watercolour pencils, right, I've got some watercolour pencils to go through with people as well on here, so we'll be able to get started with those. And what I was going to say is with the tubes of paint, so as I've done more and more painting, I've got into Daniel Smith watercolours, and they're quite pricey, so I'm buying them sort of one at a time when I can afford them. They're about £5 or £6 a tube. But you can get these little cards, and these have got every colour of the Daniel Smith watercolours, the whole collection on them. And they're actually little splodges of paint, so you can dampen a brush, wet the paint, and you can try them out. So you can actually use them on bits of paper and that kind of thing. So They are £20 for that little set, but you've obviously got lots of colours. You can choose which ones you like and then make up your own little favourite palette. So what I've been doing with those, because they come in tubes, you can buy them in little pans as well, but I like the transportability of tubes and what you can do with them. And I've been making up my own little colour palettes of my own favourites. So I've got a couple of little old tins here, and I put a splodge of watercolour in each of them. This one particularly is all Daniel Smith. So I've got my little pans, I put a splodge of watercolour in each of them. They've got magnetic tape on the bottom, and I put them in my little pan. So you can build up to this. You can get teeny tiny little tins that you can put just a few in. This kind of tin would be lovely if you bought a couple of tubes of watercolour and your little pans and put them in. So it kind of all depends how enthusiastic you are about all of this stuff and how much you want to try with it. But what I do recommend, whatever paint set you buy, it's always a really good idea to do a little chart of what colours you've got in them. So, so you know exactly where they are in the pan, because the colours when they're in a pan look completely different when they're on paper or linen. And also it's a nice reminder of the colours that you've got. So with this one here, I've tried to include all the colours of the rainbow with a warm and a cool and a true tone of each, and then my neutrals at the bottom. This is my go-to learning palette that I'm using at the moment for everything, and I use these little pans here for mixing. Hi from Germany! And then this little tin is sort of one of my most basic, with some of my favourite colours in that I use quite regularly. So, and I have actually bought pans just to stick in here. So if you don't want to buy a whole set and you want to just get a seaside set of colours, you can buy 2 or 3 colours, put them in a little tin and keep them for when you do your embroidery. But definitely do a little chart of what the colours look like. So they're all of the watercolour paints that I kind of wanted to talk through. There's loads of others. Oh, there was another one. This Koi watercolour set, also really good. Got lots of different colours in. I never clean the palettes because I like to use all of these. You can just reactivate them with water again. So when paints are quite expensive, you want to keep every little bit that you can. So you can just reactivate and you can use them again when you come to work. So you can either, when you come to do something another time, you can either clean it completely to give yourself a completely clear palette, or you can use what you've got on there. So these colours, this is another really nice set. I don't use this so often, but it's something like 40 or 50 pounds. You've got all of these colours. They're really nice grade. They're really nice and transparent. These are a good one to get to, and they're a little field set so that you can take them out in the field with you if you want to do that. Where would I recommend buying from? Okay, so yeah, I get a lot of stuff from Amazon, but actually the place that I buy most of my art materials is Jackson's Art. You get points every time, so if you set up an account with them, you get points every time you buy, and you can use those, you can redeem them against things, and quite often they'll send you a little freebie. I've had some of their brushes and things sent for free, so I really recommend Jackson's Art. Struggle finding good brushes. Yes, so now I'm going to talk about the brushes, so let's get on to that. Nicely cued, Kerry, thank you. Oh, and Cass Art is good as well. And also some really unusual sort of Japanese paints and colouring pencils and things. Choosing Keeping is an absolutely beautiful stationery shop, and I get lots of stuff from them. I get my pencils and that kind of thing from there. So is it okay for the paint from the tube to dry out in the tin? Yes, in fact, that's exactly what you want to happen. So if you're using, like I've just put this tube of paint into this little pan, if I use it now, I'm going to pick up a lot of paint and it's going to be quite wasteful, but it's also going to be really intense when I put it on the page or on the linen. All of these little tins that I've done myself, I like to let them dry first so that I can just use them. You just need to reactivate them with water. You can spray them with a little water mister, or just get the water on your brush and just give them. Some are harder to reactivate than others, but yeah, it's much easier to do that, to let them dry, than to use them straight from the palette when they're still wet. Deborah, what app do you mean? Sorry, have I mentioned an app? Let me know which app you mean and I'll answer that question. So, brushes. Your brushes are quite important for... Hi, Elaine. Your brushes are quite important for painting on linen because you want the right shape of brush and you want to make sure you're not using one that holds too much water. So the type that I love and that I would recommend are Pro Art Master Stroke, and this is Harriet of the De Winton Paper Company who got me into these brushes. My art class that I used to do, the teacher would recommend buying really expensive brushes, and she was a really traditional painter, and she would recommend, you know, natural hair brushes and that kind of thing, which are expensive. And paintbrushes are hard to look after, I find, because you have to make sure that you keep them upright. You don't store them on their bristles because they'll lose their point and that kind of thing. And actually these little synthetic ones, they spring into shape really easily. They're like £1 or £2 each, and I just think they're really good value for money. I like them that they're white, which I know is really shallow of me, but I do. And you can buy lots of them. You can buy them in a little pack of different sizes. This one's a size 4. But really, you want to have a little selection. So I've got 4 and 8. That's another 8 there. And I'd recommend a really small one. So this is another one I'm trying recently. Let me see. Here it is. So this is a 2, which is a really small brush. So the higher the number, the fatter they are. So this is a 12, and this is a 12. It's a really fat brush. It's going to hold loads of water. And the water, the second that hits your linen, it's going to move from the brush onto the linen and dump lots of water on there, or lots of colour, which is good if you've got a really big space to paint, but if you haven't, it can spread like wildfire and make you totally panic. So they're the kind of brushes I recommend. They're they're called round pointed brushes. So I wouldn't recommend one of these. This is a filbert. It's got a straight edge and it's really hard to get the small detail. You get quite a straight line of colour when you paint with these, and you want to be able to get a really tiny point. You want to be able to just put tiny bits of colour down, which is harder with the filbert brush. So make sure you get one that's round and pointy. Don't get a straight one yet, and don't get one of these dagger brushes either, because they're just more difficult to use. But we'll talk about brushes more as I paint and do stuff. Wanted to know the list of the last of the watercolours that I mentioned. Oh, so that was the koi, I think that's how you pronounce it. These koi watercolours, I think they're Japanese. These ones, Deborah, are they the ones? They're available on Amazon as well, so you can get a smaller set. But I think this is a really good set to go with. It was really good value for money when I came to look at it, so I just like to try lots of different paints and that kind of thing. So the brand brushes again are Pro Art Polar, Pro Art Master Stroke. This is it here, Pro Art. Oh, hang on. Oh, there we go. Pro Art Polar. A 12 is really quite a large one. Go with a size 6. If you're going to buy one paintbrush, buy a size 6, and you can make that work. But I do like a smaller size 4 for detail as well. So you can get really teeny tiny brushes. I've got one here. This is a 2. These, I've only just bought these. These are Master Touch Aquamarine. They were quite good value. I got a whole set of round pointed ones that I'm going to have a go at painting with this week. So I'll see what they're like. Let me just checking the questions. Right, so then when you come to paint, you've got your paint palette, you've got your, let's do this, this Haven one first. So you've got your paint in your palette, you've got your nice clean water. So I have 2 water jars. I have one to clean my brush when it's got paint on it, and then one just to get clean water from. And I also make sure that I have some kitchen roll next to me so that I can dry off my brush before I put it to the paper or the fabric. And I also have a mixing palette as well. So we've got the palettes, the integral palettes here, which you can use. Don't ever go straight from here onto your fabric or your paper. You need to mix it with water first, and you need to do that on a palette. So you can either do it here, but I like to use ceramic or porcelain or something rather than paint, rather than plastic, because it the colour just seems to mix nicer. So let's show you how we do this. So before I start, I decide what colours I'm going to have, and I always test that on a piece of paper. So we know that we want 2 blues for this particular kit because they've got the sea and the sky. And I can't remember exactly what I said in the instructions, but I would go for a cooler blue for the sea and a warmer, brighter blue for the sky. So before you decide what paint you're going to put anywhere, just see what paints you've got in your palette. So I've just put some water on my brush and gone to my pan here, and I'm just painting it onto this plate I've got here. So you can see that's really thick colour. It's quite a creamy consistency. There's not much water in there. It's mostly paint, mostly pigment, and we don't want it to be that dark. If we paint that onto the fabric, you can see it's going to be really, really bright blue. So when you're doing this, you need to, it's like putting blusher on. You have to make sure that you go slowly, put a light amount on first and build up rather than starting strong, because you can get this off. I'll tell you about that at the end. You can get them off, but you don't want to be in that position. Let's make it easy for ourselves and just build up gradually. And to be honest, the colours that I use when I paint these things, this is the Beside the Sea one that I did. We don't need them to be painted in a really solid block colour. We, you know, you can see here I've got splodges here and there, it's patchy. And I personally like it that way. I think it makes the sea look like it's got a bit more depth and that kind of thing. So I'm happy with that, and I'm happy you can see that I've built up the colour here. I've gone really pale first of all, let it dry, and then put a bit more on top. And I think you get a nicer colour that way. Do I use a stabiliser on the back of the fabric. I only use a stabiliser if the fabric is quite fragile, old fabric. So this one that I've got the watering can on, this is quite fine, quite thin linen. I really like the texture of it, but you can sort of see through it a bit more. So I would probably put a stabiliser on the back of that. And what Mandy means by a stabiliser is an iron-on interfacing or a sew-on interfacing that you can put on the back of that. And it literally stabilises the fabric, so it makes it thicker, it makes it easier to stitch through. If you've done the alphabet sampler, we had, you were given some interfacing, some stabiliser for the back of that. So it helps you to bury the thread at the back of the work and that kind of thing. I'm having kittens just sitting there by your hoop. Oh no. Oh Penny, it's fine, it's fine. Don't worry about the painting. So let's get back to it. So at the minute I'm just using a big brush because I want to get quite a lot of paint. So I'm not going anywhere near my fabric at the moment. And when you're mixing your paints ready to use, just keep it well away from your, because they do spill quite often. So I'm just adding water now, so I'm not going anywhere near the paint, just getting water on my brush and mixing it in with the paint here. So I've got quite a lot here now, and that would probably be enough for my piece of embroidery here. But what I just recommend doing before you do anything is testing it on your paper as well, so you can tell you like the colour. And let's just compare that. So I'm going to give my brush a wash and dry it with some kitchen roll. And then I'm going to try this other blue on the palette here. So again, just getting some of that colour, turn this palette round, and we're going to put that here. So it's ever so slightly different blue. And personally, I think this is more of a sky blue, and I think that is a cooler, deeper blue for the sea. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to just brush that on there as well. So yeah, I can see that I like that blue for the sky. I'll show you. I like that blue for the sky, and I like this darker blue for the sea. And just, you can see the darker shades there. So we've got it nice and watery in our pans, and always test it on the linen first. So I make sure that I print in the centre of the fabric, and the idea with these kits is that you don't actually need, you can turn the edges in. So this is surplus fabric around the edge, so you can go ahead and just practice with your colours on it to see which colours you like best and how the colour looks, because we're using antique fabric, they're different colours all the time. So how a blue looks on one linen is completely different to how it looks on another linen. So you need to just make sure that you're testing it on the linen that you've actually got. And if you don't like it on the corner, you can chop a section off and just pin it in your journal as a bit of art practice next to it. But little swatches like this, I always think they look really cute. You can cut that down so it looks more arty. You can write the names of the colours underneath to have a bit of fun sort of that way. So don't think of it as it needs to be a perfect finished piece, because this one particularly, we're doing it as a circle. So we've got all of this space around the edge that we can tuck away, we can cover it with fabric and patches in our books. You know, we're just doing it for fun, we don't need to panic. And what I am going to say, I'm going to tell you how you can remove, oh look, that's getting pink on it from there. I can tell you how to remove the paint, and if things go really pear-shaped, what you can do. But you know, if it turns into a dreadful mess and you hate it, I can let you have another piece of linen. It is no problem whatsoever. Just have to email me. So it will take me a while to post it out because I'm crazy busy at the moment, but I will send them out. So you don't need to worry that you're going to destroy it and that's going to be your kit completely written off. So you always have that option. There's always another piece of linen that you can have. So here we are, we've got the paint on our little plate here. And I am going to start painting. So as I've been moving the paint from the palette onto my plate, I've been using this really big brush. But as you saw when I put my little splodges on the edge, they leave really big splodges. And that's fine around here, but I'm going to need a smaller brush. For example, this number 2. So here's a number 2. Get much smaller splodges. So the smaller brush is much easier to control. So if in doubt, use the smallest brush and take a million years painting it. Just take your time and do it slowly. So I'm going to start with a C, and we don't need to be perfect with this either. I'm going to use this darker blue. I know I like the colour, and I'm going to just go for it. And you can see how the paint is moving on the linen, because obviously there's a lot of water in there as well. So I'm just layering it, popping it over the top in little, I'm not painting it like I do on a piece of paper, so I'm not sliding it across. I'm just putting it down gently with the tip of the brush, pressing really gently, and going along the linen here like this. Stitching first, painting later. Yeah, that's it. And that's exactly the mistake that I've done in the past, because in fact this particular piece that I stitched, I didn't know whether I was going to add, I didn't know if it would need paint or not until I'd finished stitching it. And I painted it at the end, and some of the threads soaked up the paint. So my little house, if you look really closely on the pictures, my little house is tinged blue, which I can live with. So, but you can, you know, you can restitch it. Don't really want to be in that situation. You want to paint it first. Yes, Carrie, I've got the fabric in a frame just with this one because I liked doing it in a circle, like a porthole, with the whole seaside theme. So you don't need to have it in a frame to paint it. I'll show you on the other ones. The other ones I'm going to colour them in without a hoop. How are we doing for time? Half an hour. Really been talking too much. So we're just still, the paint's just drying as we go. I'm coming closer to these objects that I don't want to be coloured. You know, if it goes into the lighthouse, it doesn't matter because we're going to stitch over that. But I really want to avoid getting the paints onto this bit because this needs to be a kind of brownish colour. So, and also I should say this looks quite dark as it's on the fabric, but that's just because it's wet. So as it dries, it will be a lot lighter. You can see these ones that I did before are lightening up really nicely. So less is definitely more. Go gently. When you get close to the little objects that you don't want it, so we're running out of water now, so I've just added more water to my paint. So if in doubt, just add more water. You can always add a layer of paint over the top. So you can see I'm keeping a little border around the boat. I'm keeping that clear so that the boat doesn't get covered in paint. We will be painting over the boat, so it doesn't matter, but just if you can practice on something where it doesn't matter, it's a good way to be, isn't it, I think. So you'd put all of this around the edge. You can see I'm using a number 10 brush for this. So it's splodging around a lot. There's not a great deal of control of where the paint's going to go. Just make sure that you just lay it down in a sort of dabbing motion rather than a fence painting motion. So we need some more paint. We're not going to go from here straight to the linen, because if we do, it's going to be bright blue like that, which I don't want for my painting. So more water, more paint. Right, can you just see what I've done there? So as I've been painting, I have splashed my paint. It's gone on the side of my linen and it's gone here as well. So this is, sorry, I was just reading the comments. This is why I sort of said, when you come to mix the colours, keep your fabric out of the way, or cover it over with something so that if you do get splashy, it's not going to go on your linen. But I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter to me about this bit here. We're going to put some blue in the sky anyway, so it's all fine. There's a splodge of blue on my little watch house. That's fine. We're going to stitch over that, so it's all cool. No need to panic. So just getting some more water and adding it to this sea colour. Alison's just done and tested the paint colours around the side. Yeah, I think it looks cool with the paint colours tested around the side too. And I would chop little rectangles of linen and paint those as well to add it and pin them on in different places in my book and that kind of thing. Mandy's still scared. Don't be scared, because there are other options. If you don't want to use paint, I'm going to show you other options. So don't be scared. Would I let that dry before using any other colours? Yes, I would. So if you don't let them dry, they're going to bleed into each other and you'll get a merge. So say we put brown here and the blue. If they're both wet, you've got the risk that they're going to merge into each other, and we don't want that. So each colour that you do it separately. This colour that I've mixed here looks a bit brighter than the stuff that I've done before. But it doesn't matter because it's the sea, and the sea isn't one uniform colour. So I will put some brighter dots over here where it's still a bit wet. You can see, there we go, and then carry on around here. And with this kit, with the seaside, with the boats kit, I painted right up to the edges of the hoop. So I got a round seam. So I'm not going to carry on doing that because we're going to run out of time. I'll just show you with the small brush. So this is a size 2. So it's considerably smaller than the one I've just been using. So this is a 10 and this is a 2. So obviously the 2 is going to pick up less water and less paint, which means it's going to put down less water and less paint. So with a number 2 brush, you can see your little splodges that you do are much smaller, but you can go up to the edge then and fill it in that way. And it does sometimes bleed. You have to, don't go right up to the very edge like you would with colouring pencils when you're trying to keep it within the lines. Just leave a millimetre or 2 to allow it to spread if it does. But generally, I'm going to just put this little splodge here in a small area. I don't think splodge is a technical term, but I think you know what I mean. So just popping it in here. And that's how I recommend that you go on with this. So we've got the darker blue there, and then we would just go on and add the lighter blue for the sky. So do it in the same way. I'm going to go straight onto this splodge that I did first to try and blend it in as much as I can. If you've got a dark bit of colour, you can give it a bit of a scrub with your paintbrush to try and blend it in a bit more. And what I could probably do with that is put a bird over the top of it. Worst case scenario. That's not thunder you can hear, that's another new neighbour. We've got, sorry I talk too much, I can't help it. We've got a dressmaking company that's moved in on my floor just opposite. Her name's Dibs. She sells dressmaking fabric and she does dressmaking classes. So as soon as this whole COVID thing's over, we'll be able to get her into the studio here and do some stuff together, which would be lovely. And you might be able to hear a guitar as well. There's a guitar shop, guitar teacher in the building too. So with this, I'm splashing it on and I'm leaving a few areas because I want it to look like clouds. So you can have a go at doing this. Just dabbing it on again, always just dabbing the colour on. You can see this is a bit drier than the colour that I've put here. I put quite a lot of water to try and get rid of that little splash I did. But you can see when it's got less water, it blends in less. So you can just add the water over the top there. So I would let that dry and then add some more paint over the top. So we'll imagine that I've painted the whole thing. Is there anything that I can share with this before we move on to something else and a different type of paint? Can I answer any questions? Let me see. Would I let them dry? Can you please write the names of your paints brushes at the end? I was like, yes, I can, Kay. I absolutely will. Show notes. I will put them in the show notes. Make it into a seagull. That is a really good idea. I will stitch over the top of that and no one will ever know the difference. I have got something that's going to horrify you all at the end, but I'm going to show you what I've done to fix it. So let me just see. Might be why your paint goes. Oh, so Carrie, when you say you thought that might be why your paint goes a bit bonkers, might need to be more specific with what you mean by bonkers. But yeah, if it dries, you just need to add loads of water to it. Put it on your palette. All of these pans are just dried paint. In the tube, they're just kept wetter so that you can put them in whichever vessel you want to. They're the same formula, I think. But the pans are just ready dried, so you're just wetting them to use them every time you need them. Do all colours dry lighter? Yes, they do. So yeah, you can, I mean, these are all starting, I think these have dried into a really pretty colour here. This bright blue that I painted is still staying really bright. But that's because I went straight from the palette and onto the linen, which you just don't, that's a bit fuzzy, isn't it? That's better. I went straight from the palette onto the linen, which you don't want to do. So this is where I've added lots of water and you can paint over the top of those. So if it's not dark enough for you, you can paint more over the top. Definitely just dab it on. So see, that will dry much lighter again, but definitely dab it on so that you get more texture. Don't try and paint it like this, because you get far less control. You get less paint as you get to the edge of the stripe. So you're much better to just put down the paint gently like that. And it is really good fun. Bleeding outside the line. Yeah, if it's bleeding outside the line, it's because you're not dabbing, and it's probably because your brush is too big and you're getting too close to the line. So smaller brush and just take it really gently, really close to the line there. So I'd always use a 2, a 4 at most when I'm getting up close to these things here. Oh, Fiona, I'm so happy this is helping. Kind of a bit waffly. I didn't prepare for it. I've kind of gone, I'm working on the basis at the moment that just doing it and helping and not trying to get a perfect film done with a perfect voiceover is the way to get stuff done at the moment. So I'm glad it's not too waffly and too much of a pain. So the next lot that we've got, so if we have a look at this Beatrix Potter inspired kit, there's no blue in this, so I am going to clean my palette. with some water. So add some water to that. I'm just going to give it a clean. It's always a good idea to have some baby wipes nearby as well, because they're good at removing paint. It's got a nice clean palette. And then this needs just a brown to give some earth to the back of the vegetables, just so that you don't have to stitch loads and get that really heavy look. You can paint the background. So with this one, I'm going to have a look at this as a brown. See, this doesn't look very dark, but let's see. So I'm trying that on my palette. What's this colour? This looks like a reddish brown, but let's see. So I've got two separate browns. Not loving either of those as an earthy colour. So I think this one is cooler and more mud-like. So I'm going to go with this one. I'm testing it here on my palette first. And I'm going to add a bit of black to it and see what that does. So I think I quite like this colour. Let's check it on here. I'm happy with that as a brown for my earth on here. And the back of the little packet that comes with it does tell you what colour it is. I think that must be raw sienna, and this is burnt sienna, I think. Burnt umber is a really good brown colour to have if you're buying separately. You can see my colours are mixing together in the palette, so I'm just going to stop that. There we go. But I'm happy with this brown here. So I've got this colour. If you want to tone your colours down, you can just add black to them. If you haven't got any paints actually and you want to do this kit, you can use coffee. Just make up some black coffee. Elizabeth, yes, it is best if you can, when you start to make your colour ready for the paint, it's best if you can do it all in advance and get as much done as possible, because then you make sure that you've got the same colour all the way through your linen. But saying that, you know, you can always go in and put more, you can make up more colour as you're working. So I put too much black in there now, so I'm just adding some more brown. But just practice on your palette, your plate like you've got here. And the thing is, this little palette of colours was £10 or £12, and it will last absolutely ages. You know, the colour, people have these palettes that last them for ages. Artists that use them constantly have them for years and years and years, so you're not going to waste it. You can make up lots of colour. You can practice by painting onto paper to see what the colour's like. And I'm happy with that, so we're going to go with it. So I haven't mixed enough for the whole pattern. I'm just going to lay some down. So with this, I know that I'm mostly covering it up with stitches, so we can just go for it. Putting the colour down. I'm using a bigger brush than I would ordinarily use for such a small area. But you can see I'm just going in the middle with it. I'm not going too close to the edges. And again, I'm just dabbing it on. And what I should have said is give it a little splodge on the side of the linen first, if you're not sure. Check what you think it looks like. Plenty of water, and go back in. Now this design is quite forgiving, so if you go over the edges with your paint, you can just put some little French knots of like a little brownish colour, so that looks like earth and gives it more texture. You can put little shrubs over the side, but I'm using a 2 now around the edge, and just dabbing it on a little millimetre away from the line. And because there's not too much water, it can't pick up too much water on this brush. It's, oh look, can you see this one is really spreading? So I've this is where I used a really big brush which had a lot of water, and it's spreading close to the edge now. You can stop that happening by using a hairdryer. So if you think you put too much paint and water down, you can get a hairdryer on it and dry it straight away. That'll stop it spreading. Or you can just relax and think, I will put some little green French knots over that, and it will all be groovy when I've finished, which is my, I don't like to panic over this stuff. I find it fun. You know, you don't need to be perfect with it all. You can just tidy up the edges with a bit of stitching. So this one is spreading quite a lot, so it's obviously quite watery. It's coming up close to the edges. If you're really spooked by it going too near the edges, just don't paint up as close, just leave it. I'm not doing this bit here because that's going to be a green shrub. Like the look of mixing as you have. Wanted how to go with the watercolour pencils. Yes, I'm going to show you how to do watercolour pencils now. So this is with the paint. So I think we've covered it off enough. Does anyone need anything more kind of going with the paint? Because I know it's 10 to 2, I've talked too much, and I still need to show you colouring pencils, watercolour pencils, and a great big mistake. So, oh, I'm glad you're learning some stuff. That's really good. Managed to get on a bit. Hello, Cuckoo. And your mum as well. Hello, Westy mum. Fellow Westy mum. Never thought to do watercolours and then embroider. Oh, I'm glad. I'm really glad it's helped. So, so the thing is just not to stress if your colour's starting to spread. And you can see even, look, I used a really tiny brush right up close, and because I'm letting it dry naturally, it is just coming over the edges a bit. It really doesn't matter. You can cover it with your embroidery, and once you've got your stitches on there anyway, you're just not going to notice it. This isn't colouring in the lines like it is at school and that kind of thing. But if you want to control it more as it dries, have your hairdryer right next to you and dry it off each splodge, and that will help you completely control it, and you can be a total perfectionist with your painting. So with watercolour pencils, I don't use those on linen generally, but what I do know is that a lot of people like to use them because you can literally just buy one pencil for £1 or something, and if you're not into painting, you don't want to invest in any sorts of paints, you can just buy the pencil that you need for that particular kit, and off you go. So I haven't pulled out a brown pencil for this. So if we go back to a seaside one, because I pulled out some blue pencils beforehand. I've got a really big set of watercolour pencils that I had for my birthday, and they're beautiful, but I didn't want to be rummaging around through all of them on our little mini course. So what have we got here? Here's another one from earlier. So clean my palette. Go. It's still a bit mucky, but it doesn't matter. And then with the watercolour pencils, you can just use them as a colouring pencil straight onto the linen. So I've got the ones that I've got are these Derwent Inktense pencils. So they're in good colours. Got peacock blue here. If my friend Lala's on the line, she will know about peacock blue. And sea blue, neutral grey. So I've got some greys and blues here that I wanted to have a go with, but you can colour straight onto the linen with them if you like as a regular pencil. And I'm going to do some testing up here. So you can just colour straight on, keep the fabric taut and colour straight onto the fabric. Now that's a really good way of colouring something in that's not going to spread, it's not going to go over the lines because there's no water at all. So if you go over the lines, that's because you've coloured over the lines with your pencil. But obviously using it like that, we're not using a watercolour pencil the way it's supposed to be used. And yeah, the Inktense blocks do look good. So have you got those, Helena? Yeah, they do look good. I quite fancy having a go with them. So we've got an intense colour here. I've been pressing quite dark so you can see, but you can press lightly and just get a bit of colour there. Really light colour. So you can vary the shade, you can then shade in. So you've got that option with a colouring pencil, you can do that. So if you wanted to colour in her little swimming costume instead of embroidering it, you could totally do that. But with the watercolour pencils, the way I recommend using them is to put a lot down on a piece of paper and then get your brush, add water to it, and you turn it into a watercolour. So see if I can bring that closer. You're turning it into a watercolour then. This isn't the ideal colour. This is probably peacock blue. Dark aquamarine this is. So this is too dark for my embroidery that I'm doing at the moment, but you can see how to use the watercolour pencil. So let's find a different blue. What have we got? Sea blue sounds promising. So I'll put sea blue down. I'm drawing quite a dark splodge with my watercolour pencil. So you can see I've just scribbled. Now I'm getting some water. Now I'm adding the water with my brush to that pencil and it's turning it into a watercolour paint. So this, you would then just test it again on the side of your linen. And so we're using our paper as a palette now. I wonder if you could, let's have a little go. I don't know if you could scribble onto your palette and then add water, so you've got it on there. But generally, I think if you're going to use watercolour pencils, you need to use them as a watercolour, not a pencil, and just treat it as an easy format to have the paint. So because you can put the colour down on your palette here, but you're only going to get small amounts at a time. So when I would recommend those pencils, so this Seaside one, again, we do what we did before with the boots. Shaving a little bit off works well too. Oh, what a brilliant idea. So you can, with a sharpening knife, you can, brilliant, thank you for that. That's a really good suggestion, I hadn't thought of that. So you could shave a little bit off into a palette and add water to it, brilliant. That's why I love you guys, because you share stuff. So with this one, we could just go ahead and do the sea and the sky and everything as before, just putting the colours down. Avoiding the people if possible, but obviously we're going to embroider over those. Should we have a look at quick yellow for the sand on this one? So my yellows on here are really dirty, but if you just add water, you can get rid of that. So this already, this colour here, loving that as a seasidey, sandy colour. That looks like Indian yellow. think it's gamboge hue, I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's a good colour. So with this one, I just dotted that around the edge of the sand. So I kept it straight like the stitches are going, and I just dotted it around the edge. There's not much water in this, so we'll do some more. Just throw it down, embrace your inner artist. Let it dry or get your hairdryer on it, and then add some more colour. When you've let it all dry and start to embroider, do you have to avoid touching the painted areas? No, you can embroider straight over the paint. So as soon as it's dry, you can, and probably just leave it overnight. You can see this one starting to dry nicely, some nice colours in it. There's only a very slight difference in the colour between the sea and the sky, but I like that, I'm happy with that, and we can add paint to that afterwards. But you can just embroider straight over that. So if you wanted to, like with my beehive, I just paint the little plinth that the beehive sits on, and then I embroider over it with some flowers and that kind of thing. So you're basically colouring the linen before you start embroidering. So that's all cool. The last thing I was going to show you with the different materials, no, in fact there were two things I was going to show you. Oh, I can't find, here it is, this little watering can. So the watering can, I think this is a really sweet design, really small for scale. Here's my sausage fingers. So it's only a couple of inches square, and I colour in the whole of this watering can, and it's nice if you can give it a bit of shading as well. So the last thing I was going to say is that I also have some colouring pencils, which are lovely for doing this kind of thing, really nice and easy to use. Where have I put them? Here we are. And my favourite colouring pencils of the moment are these Tombow ones. I got them from Choosing Keeping. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this bit here. But there are 3 sets, each with 3 volumes in, and you get your pencils, and with each one you get like a little colour chart, and it tells you what colours they are. They're just super pretty, basically, and I like showing things like this. And they come, so you get 3 of these in each box. They come in like a little book, and you've got your pencils inside, and I just love the packaging. So you've got the names of the colours here, you've got your actual pencils. I don't use these much at all, I just take them out and look at them every so often, because I think they're so pretty. And they come in, I think they're different boxes, or there's woodland or seascape or something like that. So I've got 9 little boxes of paints like that, of pencils. And what I've pulled out to do this one, I've got pigeon grey and just ivory black. So you could paint this, but obviously if you were going to paint it, you'd need a really small brush and a really pale grey paint. So really, really water it down and put it down really carefully, because it will spread like anything. So if you're not concerned about getting it outside the lines and you know that you're going to be able to cover it up, go for it with the paints. Otherwise, I would recommend just colouring it in with colouring pencils, because we're just doing it to get rid of the colour of the linen. Again, starting really light. Keeping the fabric taut so that you can colour it more easily. And we're just putting down a really light pencil colour. And then you can add, let's try a bit of black. See if that's a bit darker. And you can add some shading by adding the black into it. So this is really effective, really easy. And so I've gone in with the light grey first to get a base colour in, and then just gone around the edge with the black, I'm pressing really lightly, so you can just get a bit of colour down. So if all else fails, you can just dig out your colouring pencils and put a bit of colour like that. It's nice for small spaces because it's really controllable, and it's really nice and effective. But if you were trying to do that on the seaside pictures, you'd be there for a really, really long time. So, yeah, just checking the questions and the time. So in terms of how long these kind of paints and everything else last, once you've painted it and it's dry and you're really happy with it, go and press it with a hot, dry iron, because that will help the colour to... Elizabeth, my bracelet, sorry, it is, it's a bit noisy as well, isn't it? The heart's jingling around. But once it's dry and you're happy with it, if you go and press it with a dry iron, you're going to set the colour as much as possible. Now, I don't know if this is still going to be here in 100 years' time, but I'm kind of expecting my embroidery to be in a charity shop in 100 years' time. So I'm not too concerned about how long it's going to last. I'm not doing something for a museum. I'm just doing it for fun and to relax. And these paints, because they are a really good quality, they're not your children's pans of paints, they are going to be quite light fast, and some colours are more light fast than others. So blues typically are, especially ultramarine blue and that kind of thing, they really are really light fast and they'll last ages. Pressing it with heat obviously means that it's going to set the colour, so you know that that's going to help it last a lot longer. What was I going to say? Oh, silk paints. So lots of people ask about silk paints. I don't use them very often, but the brand that's easiest to get hold of is Silk. It's liquid paint, liquid fabric paint, and you basically would just move this linen out of the way. You just pour a little bit. It's they're nice because I've got these little nozzles. Great word, nozzle. Just put a little drop into your palette and then add plenty of water. You have to really dilute these. And so I've just added lots of water out of shot. And the thing that gets me about these colours is this colour here is chestnut, and to me that's kind of purple. It's a browny purple, not as dark brown as I'd expect from something called chestnut. So you kind of need to be, and it could be actually that it's been sitting there for a long time and the colours have mixed up. But these silk paints, they're kind of £4-5 for a pot of them, and I think that colour, I think it's separated, which is why it's gone ever so purple. But I haven't had that very long. I've only had it about 6 months, maybe maybe a year, and it just hasn't lasted enough for me to be happy with that. And the same with kind of these, they separate in the thing. You have to give them a good old shake, and you're paying £5 for a great big bottle that I'm just not going to use quite so much. What I would say is if you're going to do something that is going to go in the wash, so I've got a cushion cover with little gingerbread houses which you would need to wash, I would definitely use silk paints for that and then set it with heat. My mixing bowl. Yeah, I'd set it with heat. But generally, I think, you know, by all means, go out and try the silk paints and that kind of thing. See how you like them on the linen. They give a really nice colour. They, you know, they do, you can put them down I mean, to me, they're very similar to watercolours, just more expensive. You have to have more of them, you have to spend a lot of money to get a good selection of colours. But the only thing is you can wash them. So if you're doing t-shirts or cushions or anything like that that you know you're going to put in the wash, you know that's definitely going to stand the test of time. So I said about making sure that you cover your linen. This is my Beside the Sea linen that I did. So I told you that I paint them after I've stitched them. This is where Nikki got careless. And so I was painting the blue of the sea. I did the sand and everything else. And this is where I dripped paint across the fabric. And what you can do with that, if you've painted it first and you've got some paint like this, there's some household clothing cleaner called Ace, which gets the stain out really nicely. So as long as you haven't done your embroidery before and you're doing it at the beginning, like all good girls should, you can just spray it with the Ace bleach and you can get it out that way. You can hand wash it with detergent, which will also get most of the colour out. Or you can decide that life is much too short and you're just going to cover it up with something. So for me, I don't want to mess around with this now because it's my finished piece. I'm moving on to the next thing. I am just going to sew this little patch down that says Beside the Sea. You could colour over the top of that to give a sky. You could put some patchwork little pieces across. But to avoid anything like that in the first place, as you're painting, you can cover up the area you're not painting with a bit of paper so that any drips, you're going to miss it. And just obviously take care as you're doing it. I think I have covered everything off, but oh, thanks Caroline, I'm glad it looks oh, Denise has just joined at the last minute. I'm really hoping that it saves and people can watch it again. It was a user error at the World Embroidery Day thing where I did something wrong and you couldn't, it wouldn't save. It's a bit of a disaster. And I really hope you will sit down and do your painting. Show me if you do, ask me if you've got any queries, ask me about colours. I'll write down everything that I've used here. And if anyone's got anything else they want to know, just ask. So yeah, Mandy, I do have an extensive paint collection. It's embarrassing. I like messing around with them. Oh, good. I really hope everyone does have a go at it because, you know, you can use it for lots of different things. There's lots of embroidery artists that use it. It can save you having to put down loads of heavy stitching. Oh, Fiona, yay! Also, I should just say this was filmed as a live stream for the Stitchery. If you're watching it not live, unlive, whatever the word is, there has been chats along the side that I've been responding to, which will obviously not make massive amount of sense, but hopefully I've tried to answer the questions so that this will make sense out of context. I will put the details of everything I've used at the bottom. And guess who's just turned up that appears to want to say something? Drew is here. He's been working in the office. Oh, there's much trepidation that I'm
Sorry, it's not for your customers. I'm looking for a 4-inch hoop.
Oh, just get out. Just go. So, yeah, Drew's just been and asked for a 4-inch hoop and gone off chuckling to himself. Yeah, Grace knows exactly what he's laughing. He's very pleased with himself for that little joke there. I've got my mum in here today as well. She's been, she has managed to be really quiet. Mum usually sings and whistles and clatters around a lot as she's working, but she's managed to be really quiet today, which is a bit of a first. So thank you so much everyone for joining. And thank you, Gillian and Sophie. Have an amazing holiday. Elizabeth, I'm glad that's given you some confidence to have a go. Oh yes, Zoe, do some watercolour classes. They're so much fun. And if you get, I should have said, if you get these paints, a really nice, doing those little charts that I was telling you about, they're a really nice fun way to get into using paints and just playing with them, adding more water, adding more colour, seeing what sort of strengths you can get. It's, you know, it's just nice and fun. It's an hour of total absorption and mindfulness. I really recommend it. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Right, let's see how we go on live. Switch it off somehow. Right, here we go.